looking at reshaping strategies for HR for an environment of sustainability and technology innovation. I'm Nishen Manisankar, the CEO of Regenesis Corporate Education, and I'm joined in the room by a number of industry experts who I'll introduce to you in a very short space of time. I firstly want to contextualize the opportunity this afternoon. What are we looking at in a little bit more detail? We're looking at the mining sector, right? And the mining sector is currently facing dual transformation, which is really sustainability pressures and technology advancements. And as organizations strive to meet these environmental, social, and governance goals while trying to adopt automation, AI, digital technologies, the role of human resources is changing, and it's rapidly changing. The challenge is not just about recruiting for today's needs, but it's about future-proofing the workforce to thrive in an era of sustainability and innovation. This panel discussion is going to explore how people leaders or HR leaders can reshape strategies to attract, develop, and retain talent in a sector that must balance these technology advancements with responsible and sustainable mining practices. The focus is going to be on aligning workforce strategies with sustainability goals, adapting to digital transformation, and ensuring a diverse, skilled, and future-ready workforce. Now, in order for us to do that, we're going to tap into the expert thinking from a number of different industry experts, right? So I have the honor of introducing to you our distinguished leaders in human resources, organizational development, and transformation across different mining organizations. I'm going to start with, and in no particular order, Gabriel Herholt, who's from Harmony Gold. And Gabriel has over 30 years of HR experience in organizational effectiveness. He specializes in culture transformation, leadership development, and in the mining and previously in the manufacturing sectors. He holds a master's in leadership and performance and change from the University of Johannesburg. And Gabriel is responsible for Harmony Gold from a group level. Then next on, we have Claire McMaster. She's from Fraser Alexander. She's passionate about gender diversity in mining. Claire leads HR and development initiatives while advocating for women's leadership in the industry. She holds a degree in industrial psychology from Rhodes University and has played a pivotal role in women in mining in South Africa. So that's WIMSA. Third is Nomtondazo Hlachwayo from Schauenberg Systems. She's the head of HR and transformation. Nomtondazo drives employee development and workplace transformation. She holds a bachelor's of commerce in human resource management and has numerous certifications in project management, training management, and conflict resolution. Then we move on to Eric Katz. Now, this is interesting, 37 plus years in HR. So he's seen transformation through his career. Learning and development is some of his specialization, project management. Eric fosters leadership, growth, and continuous learning. He holds a postgraduate diploma in management development from the Gordon Institute of Business Science and a national higher diploma in training and development. So we're looking forward to your thoughts this afternoon, Eric. And Eric is from Vedanta Zinc International. And last but not least, we have Luniel Buertes. Luniel is from Northam Platinum, and he's an expert in HR transformation and workforce analytics. Luniel optimizes business processes through HR initiatives. He holds a BCom in human resource management from the Potchefstroom University and an associate management from the University of Cape Town's Graduate School of Business. So you can see we have really powerful panelists this afternoon and looking forward to their thoughts, many of whom have been in the industry for a number of years and have seen transition and have deep experiences that we are going to tap into this afternoon. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the questions and quite And then the first one that start tapping into is how's the demand for talent in mining shifting due to sustainability initiatives and these technology advancements that I've been talking about. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on that. So yeah, let's open up the floor to the panel and jump in first.
There's a massive growth or change in technology, and all of a sudden we're sitting in a situation where we don't have the skills to fit the technology, to operate the technology, or ultimately to support our business going forward. So from my view, this is not a new thing, but it's something that's evolving and changing on a daily basis. So from HR practitioners to adapt to this change, specifically in the shift due to sustainability, and we know technology is driving it, we need to be agile, we need to be more flexible, and we need to start getting ahead of the curve. So in that, I was fortunate enough to be part of the Deloitte team who looked at our future of work concept in work, where's the changes going to be workforce and the workplace. And this within that, that's what we see today. There's definitely a ask for a different type of skill. There's different types of roles that we've never seen before coming into the frame. And within that is to say, okay, right, how can we as practitioners ensure that we can get the right person for this new role, to ultimately fit in and support the business the way they should.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Lunil. We will obviously jump in a little bit more because you mentioned the different roles and that sort of thing. So as we go through a couple of the questions I have to throw to you, I will tap into that a little bit more to get a sense of what that actually looks like. So what are kind of the skills that the industry is hunting down? Claire, and then when I'm done with Claire, I'll jump into Nomthandazo. So Claire, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishan. Yeah, just to add on to what Lunil said there, and I think that you absolutely spot on. You know, we've been on this trajectory for a very long time, and I can answer the question maybe just from the Fraser Alexander lens. For us, we don't, and you know, if you look at the MQA list of scarce skills, you're going to have mining engineers and mine managers and various types of engineers and artisans that, you know, we have lots of unfilled vacancies. You know, we're looking obviously for those core competencies. So it's still the same traditional individuals or professionals that we will bring into our business, but we are looking for people who maybe align with our culture a little bit better, who share our values, who have an integrity match, who understand the importance of coming to work for a purpose-led organization, and that alignment between what they do day in, and I want to say alignment, and also be motivated by that purpose. So my best example of this is in our Next Gen Solutions division. We hire engineers, but they're not that's their core skills, sure. They're very strong when it comes to IT. Sometimes, obviously, they're very innovative individuals. They are agile, they are creative, but they have deep industry knowledge that they're now applying on top of all of those different sort of call them characteristics. And they are aligned in terms of ESG. They understand why it's important. They understand the direction that the mining industry is taking. And for me, I think that's the phase we find ourselves in right now. We know we need, more data managers. We know we need people who can manage cybersecurity better and all of those various different tech roles. But for us in the technology that we're deploying at the moment, it's those individuals who have strong technical skills plus all the other characteristics that have become quite important for us. Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic, Claire. So let's jump to Nomtandazo, and then I see Eric thereafter. You still on mute, Nomtandazo?
Thank you for the opportunity. As an employee of Shawenbeck Systems, as you all know that we are providing innovative products to the mining sector and to enhance safety for all of our stakeholders. We've started the process of technology years back, and we are advancing. And obviously, we need more skilled engineers. And in terms of our organization, specifically for Shawenbeck, what we are doing to ensure that we still keep the talent and we grow our employees in order to benefit the organization, more specifically other than looking outside. We are upskilling our employees. We've rolled out the technology training, the AI training around our organization, upskilling even those who are providing the services to the mining industry. Our products are mostly focused on technology, ensuring that the safety there. So without the AI technology, without innovation, we won't be able to strive and we won't be able to ensure safety in our industry. So upskilling the employees as well as ensuring that there's talent pipeline that we build internally other than looking elsewhere, it's quite important for the organization.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nomtandazo. Let's go to Eric.
Thank you, and good morning to the panelists, my co-panelists, as well as the audience. I'm gonna be stoned for maybe what I'm about to say, but I think it needs to be said. Okay. You mentioned I'm 37 years in my role, okay, in the mining industry. So I grew up when the mining industry was still what I tend to call hardcore mining, all right? And to a large extent today, in my view, is that although the whole of the industry has pivoted towards AI and digitization and so forth, the mining industry as a whole, and I'm not going to pinpoint, but as a whole, the mining industry has ignored the phenomenon of the advancement in technology. We're only waking up now. So we've got a huge backlog that we have to catch up with. And to a large extent, whether we like it or not, the mining industry in Africa and South Africa and worldwide are still a major role player in terms of employment. And specifically around employment of your lesser fortunate, let's call it for the lack of a better word, lesser fortunate or lesser educated people out there in the communities. Okay, so we need to be very careful on how we approach it. It's good to say that we need to drive our management development, and they drive the digitization, they drive ESG, they drive the carbon footprint reduction, and so on, and optimization of processes. In the end of the day, the people that still execute that processes are still the people that we need to start focusing on. Because unless they understand why we're doing what we're doing, and it comes back to a change management principle, all right? Your workforce is only as effective, and I've always maintained the leader is as effective as people working for him. So if the leader doesn't pull the workforce with him, then all his initiatives are fruitless. All right, that's one thing. The second thing I want to insist, Leniel has touched on this, and that is the role of the HR. And I think predominantly the question is around the role of HR. One of the sad stories for me is our HR has lost touch with industry and operations. If you ask an HR person these days in the industry, what is your role? Now, I'm a recruiter. Then you start asking him, what is the role of a specific person within an operation or in a department or things like that? Very few of them can answer that question for you because they are office-based. And they work on a job profile which may or may not exist, and they work on a proposal from a line manager who wants to recruit, and they just put it out there, and then you get to the point where our AI processes start analyzing incoming CVs based on key words and phrases, and we then say, all right, this person is a fit for the role. All right? That to me is a cardinal sin that our HR is still committing within the industry. We need to get back to the point where HR becomes part of business, become part of strategy, become part of knowing the industry, knowing your operation, getting, the old saying of hitting the techie where the techie hits the tar. They need to understand the operations and the change within the operation in order to align themselves from both recruitment, both from an analysis perspective, identifying the correct candidate, putting the right development mechanisms and processes and profiles in place in order to upskill, one, to Nondazo's point of internal development, internal pipeline creation, because face it, and I challenge anybody to tell me otherwise, our youth of today are not interested in the mining sector unless they can sit in an office. And that's not what mining is. Yes, we digitize. Yes, we've got ESG. Yes, we've got a carbon footprint we need to reduce. We've got AI coming in. We've got simulator training and those kind of things that support the change. But again, it doesn't help you to implement all these things, and your workforce itself is not geared towards that specific. I'm meaning now your internal workforce, the tens of thousands of people currently in the mining industry. My question out to the industry is, how do we change the internal dynamics of a business and drive to change towards optimization and digitization going forward and getting the right people in place? Just my 10 cents. I don't know, HR people doesn't like why I say this. I've been in HR long enough to say that I don't care.
So some challenging views there, and very interesting nonetheless, right? And I think that's kind of what this conversation is all about this afternoon, right? It's looking at all perspectives in terms of where the industry currently is, what are the challenges that are facing you, and how you come around them. Because just to quickly summarize, and I did see Gabriel, your hand go up. So as soon as I summarize, I'll jump to you. So what we've kind of heard so far is this is not new. Around about 2016 or so, these were things that were being heard, and then all of a sudden, rapidly, it got introduced. And I think it kind of aligns to what Eric is saying, in that we may not have caught up with the change as fast as we think we want to change. So there's those contrasting views between it's rapid, it's coming very quickly, we've had to change quickly, but we may not have changed as quickly enough. We are still building pipelines, that's what I'm hearing. Some of those pipelines are being internally built, not necessarily going straight out into the market. But then there's contrasting views in that some others are going out into the market to try and find those views and bring them in with a lot of those skills kind of centered and focused around technology skills that are being brought in, but at the same time really having to understand the industry really well enough to marry the technology skills with the industry skills that are required. Gabriel, let's open up the floor to yourself.
I'm the last panelist to speak, so I felt I had to do it because everybody else spoke. Normally we've got a saying, we're in the people's business, we happen to produce gold. And the point is, when you've got 46,000 employees, you need to be good at people management. We just had a Barrett culture survey, and one of the things that came out was HR is not enough urgency when it comes to work that HR does. And I was thinking and listening to Eric specifically, and when I listen to us as HR, number one, I don't think we are clear enough with how do we strategically make a difference in mining. We need to definitely own our space and sit around the table. but it's almost like HR is struggling to do that. And you know, I've written a couple of notes here, but I think we struggle to get out of transactional mode. We are super strong at transactional mode, and even then we are not. You know, so you don't have the right to be transformational and come up with great ideas in order to sustain or in order to embrace new technology if you haven't got the basics right. So for me, you know, to earn your space around the table, you need to get the basics right and do it very well. And then you've got the right to move into introduction of new technology and any other sustainability that is required from a people perspective. Because face it, take people out of mining, there's nothing left. It's just steel, rock, and cement. So I think that it's time for HR to have a very good look at how do we influence the business and become a business partner, as we say we are, but we're not really doing that very well. And you know, the last point is, whatever you plan long term, you need to be able to show the difference you make in the business as HR. If you can't do that through proper measurements, then it's always going to be difficult to own your space around the table. You know, and I think that there's a lot more work for us. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So I think just based on how I summarized what was going on, Gabriel kind of aligns to some of that thinking that in the mining sector, HR hasn't progressed as quickly as it should have, not necessarily playing the partner role as it should have. And again, you know, when we talk about these things, it could be a generalization, it could be just organizationally focused, but there's trends that kind of sit across it, and we're kind of picking that up in the different comments coming across from the panelists, right? So that's kind of interesting, but then it kind of leads us to the next question. And this is going to be interesting, right? Because we're saying we're there, but we're not quite there, right? And what do we mean by that? It's rapid introduction of artificial intelligence, automation into the industry. I kind of heard things like, if we take the people out of our business, what are we? We just rock, mine, steel, right? So that's kind of a very interesting point, because we do know with AI, robotics, artificial intelligence, you can't take humans out of the mine, right? We're getting to a point where quite a few mines are getting to a point where they can't go any further. So they're hitting the 4 kilometer mark, 4.5 kilometer mark underground, and no more opportunity for humans to go any further than that. Very low levels of oxygen, too high heat. Humans cannot survive in that. So robots can actually do that. Drones, you can put in machinery. But now if we start thinking about that, we're taking the people aspect out of the business. But what does it actually mean for the business? So how are you as leaders, HR leaders, thinking about reskilling, redeploying workers, and what are the impacts of all of these changes? Eric, floor is yours, sir. And then once we're done with Eric, I'll go on to Claire and then Nomtandazo.
The question you're posting is actually posting quite a number of other questions as well. And one of those, and I think I've alluded to it just in the beginning, and that is that, yeah, we can bring robots in, we can do AI. I mean, we know some of the mining industries has transitioned into hydrogen vehicles and all those kind of things, which up to now has not proven to be sufficient or effective or efficient in terms of what we expect the delivery and its performance should be. I think we in South African mining, we will always have a conundrum in the sense that, based on legacy and based also on the fact that we've got a unionized environment, a very strong unionized environment, and the lack of employment. I mean, look at it, our youth currently sitting around about 50% unemployment. All right. So should we completely transition into a AI, digitized, automated mining industry, we will have a lot of other unintended consequences that will follow that decision that could be extremely detrimental to us. So I think from that perspective, one of the views that we should have is, again, and we all said it in the first question, how do we take the current existing workforce and transition them to adopt, but also gain the necessary skill sets to be utilized within the new environment effectively? All right. It means that taking a mining assistant, being him a blasting, and then train him up on a mobile or a what we call a pendant control drill rig, which means he doesn't need to sit on the machine, but he's still responsible for the machine. He still needs to operate the machine from a distance via remote control. Now that's digitalization. That's a change. That's a change in the simple philosophy and principle of mining. Take the person directly out of the immediate line of fire or the risk environment, yet still keeping responsible for the production profile. And I think that is one of the areas in which we can go. And I see in the Q&A there's questions around community development as well, which I'd like to delve into later on if there's time for that. But it is part of our responsibility to take our current workforce, and again, our workforce, there's a huge component of our workforce that's illiterate. Again, based on legacy. It's something that we inherited, something we have, something we need to address. Before we can even consider those people to be part of the digitization and the changes which we'd like to see in the industry. If a person knows that he's got a future in the mining industry, he will tend to accept and tend to adopt as well as participate in the change. But if you start telling people now that automation, AI is going to take over and we're going to start laying off people, we're sitting with a huge challenge from an HR perspective. How do you balance the two? One, conforming to the government's initiatives of employment and wealth creation and equalization, etc., etc., etc. And on the other hand, making the mining industry more competitive in the industry. I'm not talking mine to mine. Mines to mines are very competitive because they're all sitting with the same conundrum. All right, and that's just my view.
Okay, thanks, Eric. And very insightful, right? I think you've hit on some key points there, which is we have a workforce which is illiterate, and if we're looking at skilling, and it's a portion of the workforce, not necessarily the entire workforce, but it's the key portion of the workforce. That's the portion that maybe hit the first, right? We have to focus first on skilling them to be literate before you can actually skill them to look at other roles and in creating additional skills that they could actually tap into. So again, very insightful. Thank you so much, Eric. Let's jump over to Claire.
Thanks, Nishan. So you're touching on a couple of items there. At Frasers, we have obviously technologies that have been rolled out in a number of different ways. So our core products, so things like our remotely operated mining, or let's call them re-mining units, or a business improvement process, or also just general technology that we're deploying, say, to Gabriel's point, to make ourselves better as a human resources team at delivering to the people that we support, using technology so that we can do some thinking work and not the administration work that we're always in trouble for not doing, right? So a number of different spaces where we do that. Those products that we deploy, like our ROMUs, the focus there is to ensure that, we're creating a safer working environment, less of an environmental impact, to make sure that we're creating a better working environment for everybody. But in all of those different examples, we will always do the by the book, follow that good process of looking at our skills that exist, doing a bit of an audit to see where our skills gaps are, and then deploying the right kind of training to close those gaps. But there were 3 areas in which I wanted to share a little bit that I think is maybe slightly different to just following that step-by-step process to upskill people to be able to meet these challenges of the tech that's been deployed. And the one is that while maybe we're following a process for a ROMU deployment, we also want the rest of our organization, to Eric's point, to come along with us, right? And we want them to feel empowered and a part of our technology revolution. So we talk about empowering our employees through tech, and we make sure that their engagement with the organization has become a lot more digital. So making sure that, you know, your employee self-service, whether you apply for leave or you you know, going through a performance development process, that's all done digitally. And that if you don't have the tools, a laptop or a smartphone to be able to do that, we've deployed Connect hubs throughout all of our different sites. And then a wage employee can go to who doesn't have a laptop that's issued by the company, can go to that Connect hub and engage with the company in a number of different ways, either through our bot, and I say she's a she, her name's Tessa, so she's definitely feminine. Engage with her to ask a policy question, or you know, apply for study assistance, whatever the case may be. But they can do that by using the tablet that's available. And what it does is it builds a bit of confidence, because yesterday I couldn't use these technologies, but today I can while I talk to my employer. And tomorrow, when a role becomes available in our ROMU control room, I feel confident that I can go and apply for that, because I know I have the ability to take on that challenge. Another way in which we make sure that everybody is ready for this challenge is through the 70-20-10 principle. And I think we're all very familiar with that, but we make sure that we give the right tools to our people, whether it's at a professional level or low level in the organization, to be able to play a little bit. You know, if somebody asks for a co-pilot license, they get it, because we're all on the same journey together. You know, you've got to be able to experiment and come up with solutions and be a bit of an innovative think tank. And if you're not having that experience at work, you're not going to feel part of the technological revolution. And then finally, just to say, on the ground, by empowering our middle managers. I think we've all had experiences where we deploy initiatives from head office and they hit the permafrost and they don't go any further than that. But what we've discovered is that by capacitating our middle managers with all of these tools and technologies, they are then able to be champions of that approach, and also to guide and help the people that they support through this change. So those are sort of just three ways that are maybe not part of a normal process, but we found them to be quite successful.
Fantastic, Claire. I think so. Some really great gems coming out of that, right? It's about giving them the tools and helping them along that journey to get them familiar with what it is. And it's kind of it sounds like you're starting small, not big, right? It's subtle, soft changes, bringing them through, and that's how they then buy in. And then I'm hearing you create a pool of champions, and you are focused on your mid managers to become the champions of this. And your mid managers will drive that upwards, and they can drive that downwards. So no, that's fantastic. So if you're looking at some great HR strategies, those are some great ideas coming through right there. Thank you so much, Claire. I saw Nomthandazo, then Gabriel, and Luniel thereafter. Nomthandazo, over to you. You seem to be on mute again.
No, I'm not. Can you hear me?
Now we can. Perfect.
Okay. In support of the statement that Eric has made so far, that we have employees who not well educated, if I can put it that way, who worked for companies for years and years. And in terms of us as the companies, in terms of progression, then it becomes at times a challenge, because we have employees that are illiterate, and moving them to technology, understanding it's quite difficult for them. However, what we have introduced in our organization is to have the AI bot that can be able to translate the processes also in their own languages for further understanding. Because we also realize that in terms of allowing only to communicate in English and to provide certain trainings in terms of the systems and that we are working with only in English, not everyone will understand. So also changing these AI bots to be able to accommodate these employees who are illiterate and employees who are not able to study further at this stage. Also looking into RPL programs that we also benefit these employees in terms of technology, in terms of innovation, And of course, we can't leave them and say now we are focusing on this new generation because they are skilled, they have the knowledge, the capabilities in terms of communication and understanding. We still need to consider those who've been with the companies for quite some time in the mining industry to further understand the new changes in terms of technology and the evolving ways of doing things.
Thank you, Nomthandazo. So hearing what you're saying is the flexibility behind the tools to kind of enable that development, right?
Yes.
The tools adapt to the individual to support them in that process. Otherwise, they'll be left behind. So that was an interesting gem coming out from yourself. Thank you, Nomthandazo. I'm going to jump over to Gabriel.
Thank you. So, I'm listening again and reflecting. What is HR's role? And I'm bringing this back to our discipline. It is for us to, in my mind, uncomplicate a lot of complexity. We need to assist line to do that. And I'll give an example. So there's a piece of output from our systems for safety in harmony that, and I'm not punting on you, but I'm just, this is case study. So it's 9 million data points a month that we generate. Yet, from a proactive perspective, we wanting. So from an AI, I see AI as a massive opportunity for HR to also influence your safety, health and wellness teams, and to strongly collaborate with them. Because, for us in mining, safety is massive, especially mining at 4 kilometers as we do it in Penang mine. So for me, AI is a huge opportunity to bring intelligence into our thinking, to influence outcomes, because safety is a business case. If you also it's not just about saving lives, but it's also, if we've got a safe mine, it's a productive mine. We all know that. So when I look at technology and HR, I've got my thinking goes a little bit into a different direction, and that is we need to look for opportunities to collaborate with other disciplines. We need to influence decision making in the business through our, let's call it, advanced thinking around technology. I think HR's got the opportunity to really influence that. And then, 2 other points I want to make is it's our job to bring calm to the storm. It's our job to get people to just, sit back, think about things, and, use analytics, use predictive analytics, use AI to just focus back on the human, because our job is to actually be the human rep, the people rep in our business. And that flows into a thing called caring, which is very, there's not a lot of caring happening in the world out there. And it's our job as HR to bring back that. It's our job to, through that, really change the employee experience at work. I'm looking as another example, and then I'll end off, mental wellness. So how do we partner with the health and wellness teams on mental wellness? And I think it's still frowned upon because, so how do we deal with this? And there's ICAS and all sorts of processes to manage it. But from a mental wellness perspective, I totally believe it's underestimated. I call it the cholesterol of safety or safe production, because you can't see it, but it's there. And we know as HR practitioners, it's evolving, and it's, there's more challenges for us. So how do we partner by being more predictive, more proactive, using AI, skill ourselves up to ask the right questions, and then influence outcomes within the business as HR? That for me is, I believe, the fields that we need to start playing very hard in, because that's the real showstoppers for our leaders in mining. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Gabriel. I'm picking up a lot on the strategic capability of HR. That's the role. It's the business partner, and it's not the reactor. And I think that's also coming through in a couple of the comments that we've also heard prior to this. It's about being able to see what's coming and to plan and prep for what you can see coming. Be the influencer but at the same time, bring the calm that's required within this stormy environment that we're in. And I think it's getting stormier at the moment. I'm not sure if you saw the tariffs that have hit the market. So the markets are in fluctuation. But obviously, all of that in some shape or form has an influence on everything that we do. So it's going to be interesting to see how that continues to impact the environments. But again, some very interesting views. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Let's jump over to Lanil, and I see Eric, and then we'll close off this point. And then I want to start touching on how you're building these pipelines.
Yeah, thanks, Nishan. Yeah, I just want to echo, I think, everything that Gabriel just said. But I think also more importantly, from an HR perspective and a business perspective, and the question is, how do we ensure that we implement the correct strategies? So what I've learned just over time, implementing new technologies, it will never be a big bang theory. So you cannot just all of a sudden decide you're going to go on this digital journey and you're going to implement everything and that you want to implement AI, but ultimately you don't know why you need AI and what the result should be. So within that, it's always important for me to put it in context. So all of us know from a South African, there's a difference between a global context and South African context. If you start talking, and that's what Eric said, it's a total different conversation with all your other stakeholders in a South African context when you start talking about AI automation and workforce transformation, because the first thing in their mind is job losses. But ultimately what it means is, from a strategy perspective, is yes, there will be a workforce, a generation that's going to exit your workforce. But going forward, what is the workforce that you need? Because 10 years from now, we're sitting with a generation alpha workforce that we need to bring, or generation that you need to bring into the workforce. And all that they know is technology, AI, everything that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So from a strategy perspective, it's of critical importance to carve the way in the next 10 years to ensure that you know what you want, you know what technologies you want to implement, and then ultimately what the value of those technologies will be. And sorry, why I say echo what Gabriel just said is ultimately, and I'm very passionate about it, HR must and should stop being a back office admin function, like everybody just said, and ultimately start doing what they're supposed to do. And what do they need to do is what you need to guide them into the strategy. How they need to do it needs to be carved into the strategy. And then the skills that they require to do this, either internally or the skills that you will require in the long term with partnerships, is critical within your strategy to ensure that you adopt this, any technology successfully going forward.
Fantastic. Eric, I see your hand coming up, but just a question that I want you to keep at the back of your mind, and we can choose to answer this or not, because what I'm also hearing is that to be the strategic partner, the question I have in my mind is, why hasn't HR stepped into that role sooner? Is it that they don't have the experience to step in that role? They don't have the knowledge or the skill to step into that role? So keep that at the back of your mind, and if you think that's an opportunity for you to answer, you can throw that out into the session a little bit later on. But it does beg that question: is HR ready to do this? Do they have the skills to be able to lead the nation that is required? Let me open up to Eric.
Okay. That with you see, I'm technologically disabled. I always tell people I was born BC. And I'm so old, I was born before computers, so apologies for that one. To your point, which you just raised, but before I get to that point, both what Gabriel said and Luneva said now as well, all right? And that is the point I wanted to stress. And basically my answer will also answer the question you just posted. Why is HR not being seen as a strategic partner? Why are they deemed to be a process process, and Gabriel, the words that you used was they're nothing more than administrators, right? That's sitting and crunching papers and doing recruitment and things like that. And the whole value proposition has gone out the back door. All right. The point I wanted to make is we want to do this, and I've asked a question now to a few people. And look, we've got very strong digitalization initiatives and automation initiatives within our environment as well. And one of the questions I've asked to HR people, you do all these analytics. Why are you doing it? Because if you look at everything that HR always puts on the table, is reactive. Why have we had so much resignations in the last year? Oh, but people were unhappy. This person didn't get this, or this was this. And then you ask them, all right, what are you doing in terms of reducing that? And they can't answer you. Okay? Then you look at all the analytics of absenteeism and things like that. And you say, all right, what are you putting in place, or what initiatives have you embarked on in trying to curb this phenomenon? They can't answer you that. And that's my problem. And that's why HR are not, because, and the whole panel has said this, HR is not on the forefront of changing the business. They're just maintaining what they have to maintain. And I'm going to make a very strong statement as well, and that is that most of our HR people these days, I'm not talking about the old hands, and please, none of my panelists around the table or the audience should take offense in this, but all our HR people coming up now these days are coming from university, learning old definitions and practices and stuff that was developed in 1950. All right? I actually want to study HR is easy. Anybody can get a BA HR degree and study the definitions and Maslow's law and everything that goes with it. The change or the proof in the pudding is doing HR correctly. And at one stage in the mining industry, when I was head of HR, I actually refused to appoint anybody with an HR diploma or a certificate, or even a degree. Don't even talk to me about a degree. I took the assistant of the mine overseer, or the engineering clerk, and I made him an HR person, the administrator for that department. Why? Because he understood the people he has to service. And then I train him up towards the HR principles, SAP, and everything that went with it. Okay? But first and foremost, Gabriel said it, Claire said it, Neil said it, and I think Ntandazo also said it at one stage. Our HR do not and does not understand business. Because we think a person with an HR degree knows how to apply HR. They know what to do in the real world environment. And it's not the case. It's not the case. You cannot apply the theories that you've learned across all industries equally. You cannot. People change, environments change, dynamics change. So I think that's where our starting point is. If we want to change the industry and we want to become a role player in the industry, a real strategic role player making change to business, HR needs to start understand business first.
So very powerful views. And I think so far, Eric, we've gotten used to your frank views, right? Say it as it is. And again, I think it makes for the rich conversation that we're having. And again, it goes to the question I kind of just threw out there, and that's kind of the trend that I've been picking up through the comments that have been coming through, right? We may not be ready and skilled enough to be able to lead the change that the organization is looking for, the industry may be looking for. When we say that, it might also be because we just haven't stepped into the experience of it, but we've done the reading behind it. So we know the world is changing. We're just not quite sure how to actually step into that change. So again, really great views. And I want to shift a little bit into now, kind of a sense of, so we know we may not necessarily be leading the change the way we want to, but what are we currently doing to be able to attract the talent into the industry knowing that we've got all this change going on, people are aware that the environment is changing. They're not quite sure about stepping into a mining role. We have diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of points to kind of make here as well, because in the mining sector, you may not necessarily have too many women that are in the mining sector. So how are you changing your strategies to adopt to, one, the changing environment, the ESG component, and how are you attracting the right talent into your organization? And Gabriel, I see you go first. You're on mute, Gabriel.
My bad. I said it's a tough question, not easy one to answer. I'm going to just share a couple of thoughts. The first thing is that when new recruits look at mining, less than all the benefits that we've got in mining, and I think mining in general pays better than most other industries in South Africa. And I'm saying it after, looking at some of the stats. However, it is an environment that is not, that conducive. We've got operations that are all over the show. And now I'm talking like Welkom, Mafikeng, Soweto, etc. So, when you attract talent, they want to know what's going on, and they will do research on your company. And what I found with recent interviews is we as a panel feel interviewed by the candidate because they ask a lot of questions, and the questions is around the following. So what's really in it for me if I come and work here? And I do believe, and it's something that we're about to do, and that's launch our revamped, renewed employee value proposition. But you need to be quite transparent about your business and put it out there so that new candidates, irrespective at group exco level down to, let's call it minor level, have got the opportunity to do a proper read up and understand what you're about. And in that EVP, there's one portion that most of them refer to, and that is the portion around culture. And it's the portion about how do we actually lead people in this business, and then a leadership philosophy. So what do we believe is our leadership traits, behaviors, competencies that we need to have in order to make this business successful? Because we know culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's in that, and if it's not good, that's what HR needs to do, is go and sort it out and work very hard at it. But if you want to attract talent from a multiple diversity perspective, with all the challenges that comes with that, is they want to have a job that's got meaning. They want to psychologically connect with it even before they start. They want to know that they're safe. And the way they do that is to be exposed to how you do things in your business. So just from a leadership philosophy perspective and EVP, those are massive opportunities for HR to really influence a talent pipeline, a healthy talent pipeline into the business where you need it. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriel. Interesting insight, right? So the EVP is an attractor, and the new generation that you're looking to bring in, culture is important to them. How you lead people are very important because they want to be able to work in an environment where they feel like people, right? And I think that's an important thing. And I'm quite sure we'll pick up some of those trends coming through from the other speakers as well. So let's jump to Claire, and let's see what you have to say to us, Claire.
Thanks, Nishan. So I think you've got to approach this from two angles, right? One is your organization and its particular EVP. Which elements are you dialing up for prospective employees? And then also from an industry point of view. We work in an industry that, had quite a tough rep over the last few years. We always say mining isn't necessarily as sexy as we want it to be, right? So we don't always just naturally attract people to our industry. But lately, we're able to explain to youth and graduates coming into our industry that mining exists. If we don't have the critical minerals that we require, we will not be able to go on the green transition that we need to follow. And at the same time, there's such a close relationship between the development of technology and our ability to mine critical minerals, right? Technology is driving a better way of mining, and at the same time, critical minerals are ensuring that technology can be developed. So there's a symbiotic relationship. And we do quite a lot of work with Women in Mining South Africa and some of our other partners at, say, the Minerals Council and elsewhere, to actually drive that narrative that it can be well understood in communities that traditionally are maybe anti-mining. If you've grown up in a mining community, you want to get out fast. You don't want to stay there. But helping those young grads understand that actually mining has a real purpose and it has opportunities for you is a very important part of the work that we do. And then to Gabriel's point about the remuneration available, what we've seen happen over the last, we've all followed REM channel reports for the last 20 years, 25 years. And we used to have a mining salary sitting, there was a big gap between our national salaries and our mining salaries. But that gap is closing if we look at the data. So we have to work that little bit harder to ensure that our particular EVPs are strong. And for us, what we often see happening is individuals who come into our organization for interviews, they will have read our sustainability report and they understand very, very clearly about the way in which our organization is achieving its purpose through having an environmental, societal and economic impact and transforming mine waste to do that. And they also often understand quite clearly the role that we play in industry to change that dynamic, and they link those two things, and that becomes attractive to them. So for us, that's been quite an important way in which we've attracted people into our organization.
Fantastic. Thanks, Claire. So again, just picking up that trend, your EVP has to be really strong because that's kind of your attractor into the organization. And interestingly enough, it's word of mouth, right? So people hear about what you're doing, they see what you're doing. LinkedIn is actually fantastic if you think about it, because a lot of organizationals' EVP is kind of demonstrated in the different things that they do. And that's posted out on LinkedIn. People see that and they get attracted to it. And that's what brings the people in. Also, a very interesting point in terms of the national salary versus your mining salaries and that gap kind of closing. So again, you got to work harder on the EVP to attract people into it. Okay. Great points there, Claire. Thank you. Let's jump to Lunil. And then when we're done with Lunil, we'll move on to Nomtandazo.
Yeah, so whilst the rest of the panel were speaking, I made some notes, and it's everything is aligned to what was already said. So it's just short. One, I agree with everybody's sentiment. The employee branding is of critical importance, and also with the generation that we're in now and going forward, there's a lot of questions being asked regarding sustainability commitments. What is your green initiatives? What renewable energy projects are you embarking on? Strangely enough, with Gabriel also mentioning it, is with some of these bursary students that you sit with an interview, it actually feels like you are getting interviewed. You need to go for the job because these are the type of questions they're asking. And I did not prepare because I'm not going for the interview. I mean, it's quite difficult to answer all their questions. And then lastly is, from an internal perspective, is your partnership with universities, technical colleges, to say what is the skill that we are looking for? Because the big thing here, we are speaking about HR. And yes, we agreed to basics. What is the basics that they should do? Should understand. So I always refer to, you need to be a generalist. And in these days, we've got more specialists than generalists. Okay, so what is those skills that we want the generalists actually to have? And then align with the universities to say, I need analytical skills. So in my world, from doing reporting and analytics and a lot of data, is I definitely need a different skill. It's easier to teach an accountant or industrial engineer some HR than actually teaching a HR person industrial engineering from a business process perspective or analytical perspective. So it's one, to build what is that skill from an HR perspective that we need in the future. And then lastly is your internship and graduate programs, is to ensure that you've got proper programs in place to say, this is the skill that we gave you a bursary. We want you to come to work for us now, but this is the value you need to add. But this is the internal training that we need to give you, because I agree with Eric again. It's one thing to have all the theory. And theory is great. It's great that you are best in class and you can apply all your theories, but there's practice is something totally different. And it's hard to merge theory with practice in your internship and learnership programs and bursary programs if you bring them in.
Fantastic. So that's very interesting, Lynelle. So you speak about the alignment with universities to be able to build those skills that you look for. So how do they create the programs and the development opportunities to bring them in? But then further, you go on to state that it's not just about the theory, but it's about the practical. So how do you build those learnerships and internships that really give people that opportunity to go on the ground and kick the tires? So I come from the financial industry, and we used to always say the gray suits need to go on the ground and kick the tires, right? Because that's the only way you're going to be able to know, touch, feel, and then do a deal that is a worthwhile deal, right? So I get exactly what you're saying. But also in some of my experience, if you look at the Nordic region, why the Nordic region and the economies are so strong is because they actually have what they call a triple helix model. So they have the alignment between government, the businesses or industries, and the academia or the academic sector. And what happens here is government allows or creates the policies that is the enabler. Industry or business funds the research or the universities to be able to develop the industry, the skills, the innovation that is required. And between the three of them working together, that's how the economy kind of grows. Here, I think we've got government creating policies, but not necessarily, in many instances, working with the sectors to be able to build those policies correctly. And then we have this fragmentation between business and academia. Academia still seems to be producing development opportunities or qualifications for the old school or for the old age. Nothing has really transformed to what we would be looking for in the future, or it hasn't transformed fast enough to kind of clarify. So there needs to be more for change on that side. So I think some very, very interesting points coming through, Lynelle. Let me jump over to Nomtandazo, and then we will round up with Eric on this one before we move on to some diversity questions.
Okay, Nishan, on our side, we are a service provider to the mine. And in terms of our EVP, we believe that our EVP is very strong. In terms of bursaries, upskilling our employees, the learnership programs, internship programs, we are very strong. However, we also built up a career progression framework that it's related to a skill set to ensure that our employees have the relevant skills to move into different levels within the services that we provide to the sector. However, what we've also realized as a service provider to the mine is that in terms of our EVP as well as our culture, it's not the same as the mining culture. We have these employees, female employees, who want to embark in this journey where they will work for the mine as technicians. However, the requirements are the same, but the culture is not the same. So as a service provider to the mine and other, I believe I will speak on behalf of other service providers as well. Service provider to the mine, our employees are solely based on site. The culture needs to be in sync from both parties to enable employees EVP programs to align. Because the experience is that when they go on site and start working on site, it's different than when they work for Schauenbeck, for example. So our EVP strategy needs to be aligned on our side. That's what we've experienced, that our EVP is very strong for the organization. However, when employees start working for the mining sector, it's different. The culture, the treatment, working hours, it's trainers, wellness program. It's different. It's not the same. So I think on our side, the challenges are only that culture fit between the two organizations. So I think career progression works well. However, does it work well for our client? The culture, is it fit enough for our client? The culture that we have internally.
Thanks, Nomthandazo. That sounds like a very interesting challenge, and not one that I've kind of that comes to mind. As a service provider, you have your own culture as an organization, and then you're stepping into the culture of the organization that you're actually servicing. So how do you balance the two? And it's not an easy task. So that's a very interesting point, and interesting to see how you guys are managing that. But also, I think knowing Schallenberg Systems, we partner with them on a lot of development issues. So leadership, learnerships, internships, bursaries, and you can see the culture they're creating and the skills that they're building through that partnership with them. So thank you so much for that, Nomthandazo. Let me jump over to Eric. Eric had his hands up.
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo what Nomthandazo has just said. And from my view, you know, again, Claire spoke about it a little bit as well. I do think the population out there does not really understand the diverse occupations that the mining industry can provide. You know, we tend to talk about engineers, mining engineers, and so forth. But if you really start analyzing the mining industry, there's virtually each and every occupation that exists is available in the mining industry. And to a large extent, our enabling functions or support functions are as important as core business. Because core business cannot function without enablers. Enablers will not have a place unless there's a core function. But to the point that's one of the things through career programs and career sessions that we're having with schools and universities in those places, and we partner with the likes of the Wits University, UCT, Northwest University, and so forth, Stellenbosch, for our management development programs. That's some of the discussions that I've had with students to understand where do they want to go, and to try to entice them that there's more than just mining engineers or process engineers or mechanical engineers in the mining industry. Okay. Our bursary programs as well, we've got two bursary programs. So one is what we call a community trust program, in which we take the top students from schools and we send them to university to study any field of their choice. All right, any field of them. We've got an internal bursary program where we actually train bursars in accordance with our critical skills profile, right? To ensure that our future skills within the specific skill sets are catered for from our local communities. Okay, and we have got a specific focus around local community development as far as that is concerned. And I think it's important to note that the internal development for me has far greater value than taking internships, graduates from university on a 2 or 3 year internship, giving them the work experience, and then they leave my business in any ways, because I just wanted to get the practical exposure so that in order for them to apply for a job somewhere else. And unfortunately, where we situated, we're far from nothing, and nothing is far from us, right? We in the Northern Cape, almost on the Namibian border, and we've got operations in Northern Cape, of course, Namibia, as well as and other regions. So it is difficult to attract people from outside of this area to this area. So the philosophy that we've applied is we try to develop as far as possible from within. And then if we cannot get the necessary skill sets, then we'll go outside and try to find somebody else.
Oh.
That's the point.
Oh, lovely. And it's echoing what Nomthandazo said earlier on, right? They develop internally, because I think it goes to that point. You invest so much in your people and you want them to stay. Whereas if you invest externally, they're not necessarily going to stay. And you've developed skills that have no advantage to you in the future. And what we're kind of focusing on here is how are we building strategies that enable sustainability within your organization. So I think some very key points there, that if you really want to create sustainability, you look internally, you build internally, and that's where you also get the loyalty, which then ensures that people will stay longer with your organization. Key points. Thanks again, Eric. So let's move on to, actually, I want to touch a little bit more on this talent pipelines, and focusing a little bit more on the diversity, equity, inclusion part of it, right? The one point that didn't come through very strongly was how we're creating balance when it comes to the genders in the organization, right? So we spoke about attracting talent. We spoke very generically about attracting talent, but we know mining is an industry where historically it's been predominantly dominated by the male gender. How are we now starting to think about creating a balance in that? So let's open up the floor around and get some of your thoughts on that question. And Eric, first up, go for it, sir.
Then you're gonna like this answer, being women in mining advocate. Part of the tripartite forums with core government, business partners, stakeholders, as well as a DMRE and so on. And one of the things that I mentioned a while back with one of the parties is women is by far superior to men when it comes to acknowledging risks, hazards, and managing it accordingly. And I'm going to substantiate that by saying, in 2001, I already employed women as heavy machine operators underground, and my injury statistics, my operational statistics, my efficiencies, my effectiveness, my machine availability, everything was on that. And I contribute that predominantly because of the motherly instinct that women has naturally possess. Okay? To do this day, in terms of our own internal development for my community center, and I've got a very large community center, more than 60% of all my entrants into that community center is women, both in engineering, both in operations, and of course, administrative computer skills, everything that's associated with it. Of my 37 learnerships, no less than 21 of them are women, right? And they are looking to advance. I think we have leveled the playing fields to a large extent, and I know the chief inspector and the PI have now issued the directive in terms of gender diversity and women in mining, right? Which I think was a good thing to put it out there and just to re-emphasize the requirements, but also to get our management, which is, like I said in the beginning when I started speaking, which is very much legacy based, all right? And for them to understand that either you transition and you change, or we will find somebody that will transition and change. Okay? And I think that is one of the things why that has been brought about. But I'm honest if I say it. I've never developed, trained, appointed a lady in a position in the mining industry in any area where she has not been successful. Yes, there are precautions, there are certain things we need to put in place to ensure certain dynamics of the workplace to align. But I think that from that perspective, and I'm talking purely from a risk hazard management perspective, a safety perspective to a large extent, that I have personally found women to be far more focused, far more effective, far more conscious of the environment around them, and that in itself produces a better or a safer environment for operations.
So again, I mean, some fantastic views there, right? Let's put this out, right? So it's not necessarily that women are risk averse, but women are more risk aware. And that brings, coupled with their motherly instinct, makes them actually very good leaders for the environment, especially where risk is the key component of it. And I know mines track it, how many days free in terms of accidents and that sort of thing. So it's a key point of awareness. And because they are far more aware, it makes them more effective. They're quicker at what they do, and that brings the effectiveness and obviously enhances the environment. So very interesting points. Let's see what Claire has to say about that.
I think some of it we can debate, but I think definitely the sentiment is correct, right? And your question was, how do we drive diversity, equity, and inclusion in our organizations? And like any other change, because it is a change, we know that historically, mining industry, it's very few women. We went to about 10%, and now we're sitting on 14, right? So all change requires a change model, and it's simple. We start at the top. We make sure that our leaders drive diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a phenomenal DEI forum in our business, and it's interesting to see our LATAM partners, the rest of Africa partner, and our South African partners get together under the auspices of our Chief Operating Officer, and how so much time is just dedicated to talking about the barriers to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we can overcome them. And that in itself is a beautiful example of DEI. So must be driven from the top. You've got to have the right policies, procedures. You've got to have the right equipment. All of this work that we're doing, all of the technological advances. The example I gave everybody earlier about the ROMU, the remotely operated mining unit. The beauty of that is the physical nature of the individual who drives it. It makes no difference. You're sitting in a control room. You don't have to be big, buff, and strong to drive it. You're also sitting in a secure area when you can operate that ROMU. So all of those little, let's call them elements around equipment, very, very important in terms of driving change and driving diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think practical solutions like lactation facilities, it's new in our industry. We're starting to see lactation facilities in a couple of mining houses, but they should be in all, whether you're a small mining house or a large mining house, whether you're a service provider to the industry, we should have access to lactation facilities. We have a lot of work being done in pay equity. Right. So no matter what we perceive the different competencies of individuals who come from different genders, and we see them bringing to our organizations, if we apply our pay scales properly, we have the right kind of job evaluation, you should have a beautiful curve that shows no discrimination whatsoever in terms of pay equity. We also need to make sure that what we measure matters, and that we include things like in our scorecard around diversity and DEI goals. So if we say we're going to match the Minerals Council's goal of having doubled female representation in our industry by the end of 2025, then as organizations we should be measuring whether or not we do that, and we must link our LTI payments and our SDI payments to the achievements of those scorecard measures. It's very important to connect those. And then there are some other elements where we operate, and obviously, how we develop our communities, how we develop our yes learners, our graduates, and making sure that representation in our bursaries, whether they're internal bursaries or external bursaries, is very, very important. So I loved what Eric actually recruit from 50% to it's all absolutely that we need to do in our communities and in our surrounding environments around elements like GBV. And the mining industry is really a world leader here. They've partnered beautifully through the Minerals Council initiative, where we are, I think, building our 4th Tutuzela Care Center, which is a place of safety where victims of gender-based violence can go to, and they have MPA representation in those places of safety. So you don't have to go to a police station and report your gender-based violence. You can be kept safe overnight, feel comfortable reporting it, and also be given the right kind of guidance and advice to come at gender-based violence. Why is this important? Obviously we have a moral imperative to make sure that we are countering the scourge of gender-based violence in our communities. But daily GBV stops women going to work. We need to understand that. And if as organizations, from a strategic point of view, we want to have the right skills required to be able to tackle the challenges that we see, whether they're ESG, technology, whatever the case may be, we need to be able to level the playing fields and have solutions for things like gender-based violence and other sort of cultural nuances and elements that prevent women from going to work. So we could do a whole panel discussion on the topic, but the bottom line is that it has to be holistic. You have to apply your model. You can't just have a leader who's really focused on ensuring DEI, but then you don't have the right infrastructure. And I just want to share one last thing that we do in our organization to support the work that our DEI committee does, is we make sure that we have working groups for all areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have a LGBTQI plus forum. It's chaired by a volunteer in the business. Members of the community can bring their barriers and their concerns to that chair. We have a differently abled working group, and then what we call WIMFA, Women in Mining, Fraser Alexander. So, and if tomorrow we decide there's a different group who is experiencing some sort of barrier in terms of DEI, we would obviously follow a similar principle. So, and just to say that we found that to work very, very well for us, and it makes sure that your solution is inclusive. And I think that's what lies at the heart of it. And through that, we do attract more women. Over 40% of our applications for all of our jobs globally come from women.
Fantastic. I mean, I think some real gems coming out of that, right? It's about creating the parity. And, I was launching a Women in Leadership program last week. And the CEO, who's female, stands up and says, I was talking about how equity should be created, allow women into the workspace. And she stood up and she says, Nishen, you know what? Here in our environment, it's not necessarily just about equity. Equity is about giving you the equal opportunity to apply for a job, but it's the skills that come out of that. It's the we look at the quality of the skills thereafter. So equity is just getting the opportunity to apply for the job, but the right person for the job should get it. And if you're male or you're female, that should put you in the right space for that. And that's what's attracted a lot more talent into their environment, because they allowed the equal opportunity in the sense of giving you the opportunity to get where you need to get to. But again, very interesting points there, right? Create the facilities that are required that will allow people, women, to come into the environment, be realistic, and apply and enforce your model, right? At the same time, create the right forums to be able to enable the different environments or communities within your environment. All right. So, okay, great stuff. Thanks, Claire. Interestingly enough, colleagues, we've flown through the time. We will start rounding up after this here, and we'll start looking at what the future of mining actually looks like. So Namtandazo and then Lunio.
On most points that I needed to address. However, in our case, we have about mining, but the lag is in terms of underground. So it brought our technical team in terms of women. But the fear of going underground based on GBV, it's also a concern. Working on surface, it's okay. Your lamp broms on our side, it's fine. We need to look into. And yes, we have innovation products to track if the employee is safe, but is it that enough? You know, in terms of mentality, in terms of depression, of stresses and trauma, in terms of GBV within the underground sector.
Interesting point. So you're actually echoing what Claire was saying, right? And to be honest with you, it was not something that I was expecting to organization, right? Or what I was expecting to come up was pay scales and aligning pay scales and the facilities, right? But to have GBV in the workplace impacting women coming in or very quickly, it's not the first thing that you jump to, and shouldn't necessarily be the challenge that we should be faced with, but it seems like we are. And I'm hearing that those are the things that are critical to you to be able to enable more women coming in. I'd love to dig into a lot more detail around that and understand what are the things we're doing to make women feel safer in the workplace. I'm hearing, Nomtandazo, you'll have some technology that kind of helps you out with that. But then again, does technology go all the way in being able to make women feel that safe? But yeah, we'll leave that little piece for another day, but it's a very interesting point that you bring to the fore. Let us jump into rounding up the session. Surprisingly, it's just flown by, and we've like got another 5 minutes to kind of chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you for your comments around what you think the future of the industry looks like, right? Very quickly, what kind of skills would be what you would be looking for, and how are you going to manage maybe the change to adopt those skills into the environment? So again, just your closing thoughts on that. What's the future? Close out your thoughts, and then we'll close out the session. So yeah, floor is open again for your last final comments.
Sorry, I've got some internet problems here, but I didn't hear your summary. But I just want to, from a northern perspective, just quickly, I think one is we've got a great team managing the whole DEI drive, both internally and then from a Minerals Council perspective under leadership of Anna-Marie Nudia. But I think just if it wasn't mentioned, just some stuff that we do. There's definitely targeted recruitment programs in place to specifically attract more women in the workplace. Inclusive workforce policies have been implemented just to drive certain aspects around it, because we know it from a history perspective, it wasn't covered or managed or implemented effectively. And then some leadership training on unconscious bias and inclusive management. And I think that the most important thing that's assisting us is buy-in from not just from the operational GMs, the exco, but really this is close to our heart. It's our CEO Paul Dunn's heart is women in mining and driving the whole aspect around it. So I think that's what is our success, is his drive, his passion around the whole DI point.
Thanks, Neil. While you're on the floor, put up with your final thoughts. Okay, I think you're still struggling there with the computer. So I see Gabriel's hand is up. Gabriel, let's jump to you.
Final thoughts from my side. Attended a conference the other day, and the 2 top elements that was raised that will be facing mining and also HR in the next 10 years, strange enough, is, but no surprise, is technology. And the one that surprised me is the environment. And, you know, I think a question HR needs to ask himself is how change it. You know, I've seen very weird weather patterns, for instance, and the impact that's got on the business. So it feels it's out there, but it's actually not. One needs to think of, okay, but how do you then equip your internal people element? So I've just written down here critical, I would say, competencies for HR in the future is we need to be good at doing the basics right. That gives us the right to do transformational work. We need to be able to be obsessed with collaboration with other disciplines and partner with them. We must demonstrate business impact, even if it's small incremental steps, but you have to do it every year to earn your space around the table. And then another element that is also going to not go away, and that's the issue around business costs has got on all of us. And HR needs to be a far stronger role player in how does it manage and can assist the business efficient, whether it's L&D, whether it's org design, you know, whatever the case may be, but we need to come to the party from that perspective. And my last comment for this session today is ultimately, it's our job to right. The rest actually falls into place. So, you know, human beings are godly created. They're unique. They're special. Help them as leaders to really embrace all of it, and not just certain elements.
I'd love to open to the rest of the panel, but I think we're not going to be able to do that where we stand. But I just want to thank all of the panel members. I think we have had some fantastic discussions. The change came fast, rapidly, and that kind of caused the stir in the environment. So I think when we say HR is not ready, I think we actually say business may not necessarily be ready, because I don't think everyone around us knows how to deal with all of the changes that are coming through, and we're learning as we're going along, and we have to be rapid in terms of the pace that we're learning at. That is required. We've heard fantastic things about EVPs and how the EVP is what could bring people into our pipeline for the future skills that we're looking for. We didn't really dig deep into those necessary future skills we require and how the world should kind of change. But I think where we're at, there's so much more that we have to work on in our current state without really worrying too much more about the future. I think we need to get the current right. And again, to the panelists that were on this afternoon, industry leaders, people that have experienced this, frank, open discussions. Thank you so much for your insights. And thank you for the other colleagues joining us on the line to hear what our industry experts have had to say. So again, thank you very much. And that will be a close for today. Thank you.